Hello there, and greetings and salutations. I have known for a few years. He's actually great friends with my friend that I've known my entire lifetime. He gave me a call. At first I was slightly bummed out that was wanting to do a long phone call because I really am that radically busy. By the way, if you've been wondering where I've been for the past couple of days, there's a simple answer to that, and it took me over 15 hours to make these 3 alligator belts. This one's a navy blue alligator belt. Very beautiful. I'm going to make myself one of these, by the way. So that's where I've been. This is like 16 hours of work over here. So if you think I've been slacking or something or not. Anyway, his name is George Mizell. I think it was the largest in the United States seller of magnets. He's still affiliated with that group that sells magnets. You can find him on YouTube under the one word Super Magnet Man, and he called me up, and I'd heard from Tom that this gentleman, I assume he's a subcontractor for the United States government, wanted to talk with me, so George actually put him on the phone, so all 3 of us were talking. By the way, these pyramidal magnets actually came from Super Magnet Man. He had these specifically designed for him in China, and the reason why the 2 pieces is actually magnetizing something this thick all the way to the center is basically, it's not impossible, it's just that it would be low quality, so to make them best, they have to be made in multiple pieces. George actually has these in a hallback array, some larger pyramidal magnets than these actually, for experimentation. Anyway, George called me up. He actually makes some interesting, fascinating videos on magnetics, and the 3 of us talking was like a meeting of magnetic minds. And his buddy, I don't know if I'm allowed to give his name or not. You could contact George Mizell if you want, or leave him a comment on his YouTube channel. Anyway, his buddy, I'll just call him Bob, right, said that he'd read my book on magnetism several times and wondering when the next edition is going to come out, and it's kind of fascinating. I don't know at what level he developed this for the U.S. government. They're in satellites in space, and of course there's no way I could get any details from him on the specifics, but he develops Gauss meters, or magnetometers, incredibly sensitive magnetometers. And as you very well know, submarines are made of a special type of steel. You obviously can't make them out of aluminum or titanium. They're made out of steel, because the only thing that will actually take incredibly high pressures on submarine hulls is steel. And it was I forget the type of grade of steel that are used in submarines. But anyway, they're basically big steel cigars that are floating at various depths in the ocean. And everything, especially something that large made out of steel, and I know they're different size submarines obviously, so Boomer class and Los Angeles class, and Russia has their own different classes of submarines. There are other countries, including Sweden and China, that have their own subs. That all of these subs now, they have unique, nearly silent propulsion systems, but all these subs now are visible. And so the guy that's a huge fan of my book developed this thing that is able to measure at the level of the satellite, from what I'm able to gather, picotesla levels of magnetic fields. I don't know if you know what a picotesla is, but it is a magnitude about the level of the magnetic field that actually is generated from the human brain for thinking. And basically these large steel cigars that are floating at various depths of the ocean, to stick it in simplex parlance that you're able to grasp it simply. I don't want to make it complicated, and even I wasn't given the information on the technology or how it works, obviously so. But anyway, these magnetometers on satellites in space are able to detect every submarine on the face of the Earth. Now, I thought about this later after the phone call was over. It was like an hour-and-a-half long phone call. I don't know if you know how GPS works, but they send out about 5 watts and 400 megahertz range, and handheld GPS devices don't communicate with the satellites. They actually take the signals from the satellites, which use atomic time, And by triangulation based upon the time differential, you have 2D mapping or 3D mapping, which requires 3 satellites to find out your GPS location. So it's like a reverse GPS mapping of all of these satellites, and it would be the same thing for 3D mapping of a submarine in the ocean. You could determine its location through 2 coordinates of the magnetometer reading, these hypersensitive magnetometers that are on satellites. And 3D mapping would, of course, tell you the depth that they're at. So in other words, all submarines on the face of this Earth, based upon this technology developed by this gentleman via his technology that was not explained to me. By the way, George Mizell, the guy that introduced me to Bob, he's the only one of 2 people that I know that would never ever lie. There are some people that consider even the smallest lie to be an immortal sin. He's a brilliant person to talk to, and you could watch his videos on YouTube. Type it in as one word, Super Magnet Man. Anyway, his friend Bob has this technology that can see not literally see, but find its location anywhere on Earth. And so that's extremely beneficial. That's something that's really, really, really important, because nuke devices that are basically on these movable platforms vis-a-vis submarines, knowing their location is insanely important. So I don't know who developed what at what point in time, but anyway, this person is a huge fan of my book on magnetism, who says that he's read it several times. Wouldn't give me the details on it, but George Mizell told me about it first via him. That is, hypersensitive Gauss meters are able to measure at near pico-Gauss, picotesla levels of magnetic field flux. In essence, these giant steel-covered cigars, which is what a submarine is shaped like, essentially, steel-covered cigars in the oceans do is they break the magnetic field flux lines of the Earth's magnetosphere, which people think, well, the magnetosphere is out there. Is the reason why we see the Aurora Borealis, and the North Pole and South Pole. But, you know, a compass works on ground level. I don't have a compass in front of me. I usually have a compass everywhere. You know, compasses work everywhere. So these steel cigars break the magnetic flux lines as they move, or they actually, I don't know, since that was in no way, shape, or form explained to me, cause disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field flux lines, which are not actual things, they're not lines, they're constructive and destructive lines of interference, the same thing you see underneath the ferrocell, but nevertheless, for sake of communication through a common vernacular here in English, by using this hypersensitive magnetometers in space, it's basically like reverse GPS. You're able to locate these submarines all over the Earth. It's absolutely fascinating. George himself, since, I don't know if it's the largest, it might be the second largest, his magnet sales, you know, because he is at the level, and he says this in his videos, and I have many of his magnets, this one being, I don't want to get it too close to my computer here, this pyramidal magnet, able to order magnets of specific shapes and dimensions. And I really can't talk about this on YouTube because then it sounds like I'm giving medical advice, which I'm not, but George was talking with the 2 of us about something that recently was approved by the FDA. It's called transcranial magnetic stimulation. Talking about people that are depressed, and it was able to stimulate dopamine and serotonin levels in the brain. And people that are suffering hand tremors, not due to Parkinson's, but hand tremors due to, which I did not know about this, dopamine deficiency. Not through the power of suggestion that this will do that. It's a long thing, and I really can't talk about it because social media is big on not talking about, you know, medical stuff, and I don't ever give medical advice to anybody. It was a long discussion also too with George Mizell and me and Bob. He was talking about his depressed cat, which of course you can't put in the power of suggestion to his cat, and he took him to the vet and he said, your cat's depressed. He told me the horrible things his cat would do that proved that the cat was just like really, really bummed out and depressed, and he stuck a device, which you'll guess, you know, even though I'm not able to say it, and I don't give anybody medical advice, not even for your cat, that his cat made a turnaround, and also to a video from 7 months ago, which I had not seen. He uses a 2x2x2 cube magnet, which is really huge and quite expensive. I'd love to have one of those, by the way, if he watches this video. And he uses a suspension. I actually have it in my book where I show a tornado in a bottle. except I'm only using test tubes and a 2 by 2 by 1 inch neodymium. By using a viscous liquid against a nanoparticle level of either ferrofluid or iron filings. The ferrofluid is the same thing as just micron level iron filings, essentially, is what's in ferrofluid. Anyway, he uses 2 micron level iron filings and silicone oil. He sticks a little pepper dropping of the same thing I did, and I put those pictures in my book. I don't know if you got that idea from my book or not. He didn't say. I said, what sort of suspension are you using? He's using silicone oil, which I don't know how expensive silicone oil, last time I priced it was a really long time ago. And you could see in his video too, if you look at it, the video was made 7 months ago, this tornadic vortex accelerating towards the 2 by 2 neodymium that he has above this jar about yay big. And he was talking about once it actually gets to the center, it actually flies away from the center, and I actually explained that is the conjugate geometry of the magnetic and the dielectric. You have the hyperboloidal dielectric, which is why the iron filings accelerate towards the edge. And since he's either the largest or second largest seller of powerful neodymium iron borons in the United States, he may be the largest or the second largest, I don't know which. You know, he knows about the experiment when you actually place like a steel ball or something on the face of a magnet, or even a neodymium. It will actually not stay in the center, it will accelerate towards the edge, which is where the magnetic flux is, which of course is where the toroidal vector of the geometry of the magnetic flux is on any magnet of any shape. But it is more visible on the larger magnet. It's really hard to, you know, see the flux and differential between the dielectric geometry and the magnetic geometry on a magnet until you get a monster honking magnet. And I mean, nobody on Earth that has more honking monster magnets than George Mizell. So it was a wonderful conversation. It was like a meeting of magnetic minds, and the technology was very brilliant. Obviously, I was not going to get any details out of him about it. I was surprised I was even told that. But it's kind of brilliant. It's basically like a reverse GPS, except for triangulation using timing, which is what GPS uses. You're actually using triangulation or 2D positioning of these subs under the water. You know, they could be 20,000, you know, I mean, not 20,000, but I mean, they could be thousands of feet underwater, but still these giant steel cigar-shaped objects traveling in the ocean. Every major government in the world has top priority to know where the heck these are. I mean, they could be parked right off the United States. But now they're all completely visible, not physically visible, but visible from triangulation. And by eliminating out your own subs locations, like in the United States, for example, would know where every sub is of ours. Like our sub is here, here, here. It's like, well, this one, we found one here. That's not ours, therefore it's Russian or Chinese, by using this hypersensitive magnetometer for determining where these subs are. And that's just, it's fascinating. So I was actually pleased and bemused and other things that I was having a talk with a guy that developed next level technology for sub finding, you say sub hunting, and he's a huge fan of my book. He's like, I've been wanting to talk to you. When's your next edition going to come out? I was like, well, I'm so friggin' busy. I promised a retroduction book first. And he's like, oh, I've read your book many times, love it. So it was a wonderful conversation. If you want to look at some of the neat videos from George Mizell, he shows you some neat Hallback arrays. Like, again, his YouTube channel is Super Magnet Man, one word, on YouTube. You'll notice him because he's from Alabama and he speaks with a certain southern twang. That's nothing against him. I'm just saying you'll know him immediately. There's actually nobody on YouTube making videos with pyramidal Hallback arrays, which he builds those for experimentation. But I wish I could actually tell you about some of the stuff he did to people with health issues, but I can't talk about that because the social media don't like me to talk about that. You don't talk about, you know, if you do this and, you know, that's going to happen, because that's almost like you're talking about medical advice. I'm never going to be accused of that, but some fascinating stuff. George Mizell is at the top 3 list of anybody I know on Earth. Top 3 list, the most credible people ever. He's a brilliant person. He's very busy like I am. I I regretted the phone call before it started, but once it did start and we were having a meeting of magnetic minds here between me and Bob and George Mizell, it was just neat. And they were saying that if you ever met anybody or read anybody's works on Earth that knows, that you think knows what magnetism is, like, no, I've got every book ever written on it. I'm not trying to sound egotistical. It's like, I've not read one that tells you what a magnet is, since the qualitative object, the conjugate field. No one ever talks about that except for me. Nobody does. And it makes explaining what magnetism is and what the magnet actually is, since it's not quantitative, rather it's qualitative, and talking about these atomists and whatnot. And he completely agreed. And I have to try this thing out with silicone oil as a suspension for a nanoparticulate of iron filings for creating a tornado in a bottle. You just place that solution near a magnet, and immediately a little tornado, a vortex develops. And everybody loves a good vortex. A vortex or a tornado in a bottle. What would be better than a tornado in a bottle? Actually, I know what would be better than a tornado in a bottle is hypersensitive magnetometers on satellites in outer space for submarine hunting. So very, 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 very cool. And thanks for George Mizell reaching out to me in the phone call with me and George and Bob. And just wanted to relate that to you. Sorry I've been so busy, but I've got 15 hours of work here. Turned out very beautiful, didn't they? 100% handmade by me. Took forever. They're so beautiful. I'm going to make one of my own blue alligator belts. Thanks so much for watching. It was raining like crazy outside. It was thundering earlier. I mean lightning. Thunder and lightning earlier. I love thunder and lightning. Trying to be careful with these gentlemen's belts over here. There you go. That one's a really long belt. There's a larger person like me. Thanks. Goodbye.